For 12 years I believed my husband when he said my smile was like the sun. Tonight, a single message revealed he'd been calling me a scarecrow, and that was only the beginning. Mark always said my smile was the reason he fell in love. He'd trace the corners of my mouth with his thumb and tell me it was like the sun coming out from behind a cloud. For 12 years I believed him. For 12 years I built my world around the warmth of that compliment, around the man who gave it. We had a beautiful life, or so I thought. 2 incredible kids. A house in the suburbs with a yard that was perpetually covered in toys, and a love that felt as comfortable and reliable as my favorite old sweater. Tonight was his big night, the annual corporate awards dinner. It was the kind of event where careers were made, where a casual chat with a senior VP over dry chicken could lead to a promotion. He'd been excited for weeks. I was supposed to go with him, of course. I had a new dress hanging in the closet, a deep emerald green silk that made me feel like myself again. Not just a mom, but our 5-year-old Lily had spiked a fever that afternoon. There was no question of me leaving her. "I'm so sorry, honey," I'd said, stroking his lapel as he stood in the doorway, looking impossibly handsome in his tailored suit. He smelled of expensive cologne and ambition. "Don't be," he'd replied, his voice soft. He kissed my forehead, then Lily's, who was sleeping fitfully on my shoulder. "You're where you need to be. We'll celebrate when I get home. Maybe I'll even have a shiny new award for the mantelpiece." He winked, and my heart did a familiar little flutter. He was my rock, my partner. We were a team. After getting Lily settled and checking on our son, 8-year-old Ben, I collapsed onto the sofa. The house was quiet except for the hum of the baby monitor. I poured a small glass of wine, kicked my feet up, and scrolled aimlessly through my phone, picturing Mark charming his bosses. I felt a pang of disappointment at missing it, but mostly I felt a deep swelling pride for him. That's when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Hi, is this Chloe, Mark's wife?" I frowned. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Sarah. I'm new in Mark's department. We met briefly at the company picnic this summer. I'm so sorry to bother you at home. I felt like you should know something." A cold knot of dread began to form in my stomach. My mind raced through the worst possibilities. An accident? Was he hurt? "Is everything okay? Is Mark okay?" I typed, my fingers trembling. The reply came a moment later. "He's fine, physically. He's holding court with some of the senior guys. They're all laughing." The relief was so immediate it made me dizzy, but it was quickly followed by confusion. "Okay? So, what's wrong?" There was a long pause. The 3 little dots indicating she was typing appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, the message came through. Someone asked him where his beautiful wife was tonight. He took a big sip of his drink, puffed out his chest, and laughed. He said, "Oh, I had to leave the scarecrow at home to look after the kids." The words didn't compute at first. Scarecrow. It felt like a typo, a bizarre autocorrect. But then a memory, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog of confusion. It was from a few months after Lily was born. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and hadn't properly showered in 2 days. I was standing in the kitchen in a pair of baggy sweatpants and one of Mark's old frayed flannel shirts, my unbrushed hair tied in a messy bun. He had walked in, looked me up and down, and chuckled. "Wow, you look like a scarecrow," he'd said. I'd burst into tears. He'd immediately backtracked, wrapping me in his arms, apologizing profusely, saying it was a stupid, thoughtless joke, and he didn't mean it. He said I was beautiful, that I was a superhero for everything I was doing, and I believed him. I'd buried the comment, written it off as a moment of new parent stress. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. "The scarecrow?" I typed back. "Are you sure that's what he said?" Sarah's reply was instant. "I'm positive, Chloe." They all laughed. One of them even patted him on the back and said, Good man, gotta keep the old ball and chain happy. It was disgusting. I'm so sorry. The air left my lungs. It wasn't a one-off joke. It was my name. It was who I was to him, to them. All those times he'd come home late from team drinks, were they all sitting around, laughing at the scarecrow he had waiting at home. I stood up and walked numbly to the hall mirror. My hair was in a messy bun. I was wearing an old t-shirt with a small stain on the front and comfortable leggings. My face was bare, my eyes tired. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't see the woman whose smile was like the sun. I saw exactly what he saw. I saw a scarecrow. The wine glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. A sharp, ugly anger began to burn through the shock, hot and consuming. And in that exact moment I heard the sound of a key in the front door. The sound of the key turning was like a countdown timer in my head. My body went into a strange, detached autopilot. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I knelt, my knees crackling, and began picking up the larger shards of glass with unnervingly steady hands, placing them one by one on the coaster on the coffee table. The door swung open, and there he was, my handsome, successful husband, beaming. He was holding a heavy glass trophy. "We did it, Chloe. Vice President's Award for Excellence," he whisper-shouted, closing the door quietly behind him so as not to wake the kids. His smile faltered when he saw me on the floor amidst the wreckage of the wine glass. "Honey, what happened? Are you okay?" He rushed forward, dropping the award with a clunk on the entryway table and kneeling beside me. "Don't touch that, you'll cut yourself. Let me get the dustpan." His concern was a physical blow. It was the same gentle, caring tone he'd used for 12 years. The tone I had trusted implicitly. I looked up at him, my face a blank mask. "I'm fine. It just slipped." My voice was flat, a stranger's voice in my own throat. He started to fuss, trying to take the pieces of glass from my hand. "Here, let me." I pulled my hand back sharply. "I've got it." I stood, carried the shards to the kitchen bin, and returned with the dustpan and brush, sweeping up the glittering dust of my old life. All the while he watched me, a small confused frown on his face. "Tough night with Lily?" he asked, his voice soft. "You seem off." I finished sweeping and put the dustpan away. I walked back into the living room, deliberately avoiding his gaze, and ran my finger over the cool, heavy glass of his new award. "Congratulations," I said, the word tasting like ash. "You must be so proud." "We should be proud," he corrected, coming up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. I went rigid. He didn't seem to notice, nuzzling my neck. "This is for us, for the family. All those late nights finally paid off." He squeezed me tighter. "I missed you tonight." The lie was so effortless, so practiced. A hot, acidic rage coiled in my gut. I twisted out of his embrace and turned to face him, my expression unreadable. "Oh, did you? Did anyone ask about me?" He looked taken aback by my coldness, but recovered quickly with a charming smile. "Of course they did. Danvers from marketing asked where my better half was. I told them all you were at home holding down the fort, being the superhero that you are. I told them I couldn't do any of this without you." Every word was a perfectly polished stone, dropped into the churning water of my fury. He was building a beautiful story for me, a story he thought I wanted to hear, completely oblivious to the fact that I had already read the real, ugly ending. I let the silence hang in the air for a few long seconds, watching the confusion cloud his features. "That's funny," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "because I heard you told them something different." The color drained from his face. It was instantaneous. The charming, successful husband vanished, and in his place was a cornered animal. "What? What are you talking about? Who have you been talking to?" "Does it matter?" I asked, my voice gaining a sliver of strength. I just have one question, Mark. The scarecrow. Is that what I am to you? He flinched as if I'd slapped him. Chloe, no, it was a stupid joke. A complete misfire. The guys were all ribbing each other about their wives. It was just locker room talk. It meant nothing. It wasn't the first time you've used that word, was it? I pressed, the memory of that day after Lily was born flashing behind my eyes. I saw his panic, the frantic backpedaling. It wasn't an apology for the sentiment, just for getting caught. My God, Chloe, you're not still holding on to that, are you? That was years ago. I was stressed, you were stressed. He ran a hand through his hair, his voice rising in frustration. It was a word, one stupid word. What do you want me to do? After everything I do for this family, you're going to crucify me over one bad joke? His anger, his attempt to make this my fault, was the final confirmation. This wasn't a mistake. This was him. I felt a sudden, chilling clarity. I walked past him to the entryway table where he'd left his suit jacket and phone. He watched my every move, his jaw tight. I didn't pick up his award to smash it, though the thought was tempting. I picked up his phone. He took a half step toward me. What are you doing? I turned it over in my hand, the black screen reflecting my tired, pale face. I finally looked him directly in the eye, and I let him see the cold, hard fury I had been suppressing. The fury of a woman who had just realized her entire marriage was a punchline. I was just wondering, I said, my voice dangerously calm, if Scarecrow is my nickname for your friends, what's her name? The question hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. Mark's face, which had been a mask of defensive anger, crumbled. It was a complete, almost theatrical collapse of his composure. Guilt, raw and undeniable, flooded his features. He didn't even try to lie. He just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing silently like a fish gasping for air. In that single, devastating moment, I had my answer. There was a her. Who is she, Mark? I asked again, my voice colder now, devoid of the tremor it had held just moments before. I wasn't just a hurt wife anymore. I was an archaeologist uncovering the ruins of my own life, and I needed to see the full extent of the damage. He finally found his voice, a pathetic, strangled whisper. Chloe, it's not what you think. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Isn't it? I think you're a man who calls his wife a scarecrow behind her back, while he's sleeping with someone else. Tell me, how far off am I? He sank onto the arm of the sofa, burying his face in his hands. Her name is Jessica, he mumbled into his palms. She's in legal. It started a few months ago. It was just a stupid fling. It's over. I swear. It meant nothing. It meant nothing? I repeated, the words echoing in the quiet room. Does she know you call your wife a scarecrow? Or does she get a prettier nickname? Does she get to be the sun coming out from behind a cloud? He flinched, looking up at me with tears in his eyes. The sight of them didn't move me. They were tears of self-pity, not remorse. Please, Chloe, don't do this. Think about the kids. Oh, I am thinking about the kids, I said, my voice like ice. I'm thinking about what a wonderful role model you are for our son. This is how you treat the woman who gave up her career for you, Ben. This is how you show respect to the mother of your children. And I'm thinking about Lily. I never want her to think for a single second that it's acceptable for a man to treat her this way, to diminish her, to make her a joke, to make her feel small so he can feel big. I walked upstairs, my movements deliberate and calm. He followed me, a babbling, pleading mess. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll quit my job. We can move. Anything. I ignored him. I went into our bedroom. My bedroom. I corrected myself internally and pulled a suitcase from the top of the closet. I started opening drawers, pulling out my clothes with a methodical lack of emotion. T-shirts, jeans, sweaters. The sensible, comfortable uniform of a stay-at-home mom. The uniform of a scarecrow. "What are you doing?" he cried, grabbing my arm. "You can't leave. Where will you go?" I shook his hand off me, my gaze unwavering. "I'm not the one who's leaving." The fight went out of him. He stared at me, his face slack with disbelief. You're kicking me out." "Pack a bag, Mark," I said, turning my back on him and continuing to pack my own. "Take what you need for a few days. You can stay at a hotel or you can stay with Jessica. Frankly, I don't care. We'll discuss the long-term arrangements through lawyers." He stood there for a long time, watching me. The silence was broken only by the soft rustle of clothes. Then, defeated, he walked to his side of the closet and numbly pulled down his own bag. An hour later, he was standing by the front door, bag in hand. The award he'd been so proud of sat on the table beside him, looking cheap and meaningless. He looked like a stranger, a hollowed-out version of the man I thought I knew. "Chloe," he said, his voice cracking, "I love you." I stopped what I was doing, which was neatly folding my children's laundry on the sofa, and I looked at him. I looked at the man who had called my smile sunlight, and then turned it into a punchline. I looked at the father of my children, who had taught them about love with his words and about betrayal with his actions. And I felt nothing. The anger had burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard certainty. "No, you don't," I said, my voice even and clear. "You don't get to call that love. Love doesn't mock. It doesn't cheat. It doesn't belittle. I don't know what you call what we had, but it's over." I turned back to the laundry, folding a tiny pair of Lily's pajamas. It was the most final dismissal I could give. He waited for another moment, hoping for a crack in my resolve. But there wasn't one. Finally, I heard the click of the door opening, and then the soft sound of it closing behind him. The silence that descended on the house was different this time. It wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I finished folding the laundry and walked over to the hall mirror. The same one I'd stared into hours earlier. I still had my hair in a messy bun. I was still wearing my stained t-shirt. But I didn't see a scarecrow. I saw a woman. I saw a mother. I saw a survivor. And for the first time in a very long time, I smiled. It wasn't a big, brilliant smile. It was small and tired and a little bit broken, but it was mine. And it was just for me. The sun was finally coming out from behind the clouds.